Environmental housing. Housing is degraded. In the absence of the population, a vote taken to allow 18 companies to establish offshore drilling oils, like we said. The violation of the right to return is group 2. Right to self-determination and right to association is a violation in group 5 that we have presented to you. Education, the children spoke well for themselves, so I won't speak again for the children. But James Randall's helped put things in context when he explained that they came here with and what they did is that they took over 100, and I think the number was 102 schools away from the Orleans Parish school system and gave them either to the state or to charter schools, and that the board itself, the collaborators on the board, that they voted the takeover to a group that didn't even exist yet. In fact, what they did is they voted it over to this corporation that didn't exist yet, then they became the leaders of the corporation. Slick. Reminds you of Will Clinton. Slick Willie. Slick. Method would have disqualified all Jefferson County schools. The methods that they used in order to say whether the New Orleans Parish schools could continue to exist would have disqualified all Orleans County schools, not only the Orleans County schools as it did, but it would have disqualified those schools in Jefferson County, which were predominantly white, would have disqualified the schools in Baton Rouge, but they only applied it to the Orleans Parish in order to take over those schools. Forshey, do you imagine what children thought who went to Forshey School, a school which had fought, and I'm a little familiar with Forshey School. It was an African school in the middle of New Orleans. It was essentially of working class and quote-unquote lower class in terms of economic means, brothers and sisters. It was a proud school. It was a school that had a formidable athletic program, won many championships, fought hard in other ones. And yet they come back to school and they find that they no longer have the school, but they've given the school to the white folks. And there was a problem, there was a program to give Forshey School to the white folks even before Katrina. And so it succeeded after Katrina, and we go on with that. Kathy Beauchamp, that was working for the Catholic Charities in terms of an advocate. We know her testimony. We know the testimony of Karen Harper Royal, whose son had an educational disorder, and how they had used, in her case, busing or the lack of a bus to deprive her children. And Broderick Rebb, Deborah Carey, Rogers Youngblood, Dominique Townsend, Sharday Womack, the voices of the youth. They came together and their testimony collectively demonstrated Charge 3, the violation of human right to life, human dignity, and recognition as a person. The International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights, where they speak to the question of every child having the right to have undiscriminating education, or education without discrimination. The Convention on the Child, which talks about that in Article 6, Sections 2 and Section 1 of the same article. We talk about health. Sister Suba, Sister Alice Craft Kearney talked about various different health challenges. Sister Kearney, in her testimony, talked about the murder of yet another brother, Terry Burton. Because of his mental problems, they murdered him. And we see that $300 million sent to New Orleans, and only 13% of this, or sent to Louisiana, only 13% of it got to the Orleans School District. Dr. Johnson talks about the need of black healthcare professionals, as well as psychologists, in order to help. How the children are crying out for this. How other folks are having problems relating to the children. The need for these, and the inability of the government, or the refusal of the government to provide them, is another violation of our human rights. K. Brad Ott, talked about the closing of Charity Hospital and how that was one of the fundamental things, along with the laying off or the firing of all the teachers, which put our brothers and sisters in a situation of no return instead of the right to return, because that was the biggest way that folks were employed. And then we had the testimony of Malik Rahim in the military occupation. He talked about the vigilantes, and here again we must recall history. We must ask ourselves if these, we know the rigorousness which the American police departments, American state police, American city police, American federal police go about making headlines when they take guns from young brothers and sisters in the black community. Yet we have white people walking around openly talking about the black folks that they killed, showing their guns on video, and yet no one has been prosecuted. We talk about this. We talk about what happened in Gretna. But what happens in Gretna is what happens all over, but it happened here after Katrina, and it is a human rights violation. The government is responsible for those vigilantes. The government bears responsibility because the government knew that they exist. They knew that they exist before Katrina. They trained. They openly trained. And so they knew that they exist before Katrina. He told them that they exist during Katrina, and the government has not moved on them. So the government has tacitly, it has by policy and by practice, given them the right to exist, yet at the same time it disarms the black population, tells them if they get guns they will go to jail, they will be killed, even if they're just using guns to defend themselves. This is military occupation. This is what this is military occupation. And so what we have is we have the question of aid dispersal, which we also have testimony on from Chokwe. Chokwe raised the relevant question, why not Cuba? Why not aid from Cuba? It's a shame that we need Cuba to come in here and give people aid in a filthy rich country. But Cuba, with few resources, has educated its own people, has trained doctors. I've visited Cuba, I have seen it. I have seen where almost a third of the Cuban teacher population go on sabbatical 1 year, so the other 2/3 can teach, and the other third can come back fresh the next year. We know that in Cuba and in Libya and all the places they condemn, the people get at least 2 years of college, and in Libya they get 4 years of college. Yet we fight here amongst each other trying to get out of high school and into college. In a filthy rich country. In Iraq, before they were bombed in 1991, they had zero illiteracy. Why not Cuba? Why not aid from Venezuela, where somebody has the right to speak the truth to power? Why not? And so we talk about this testimony from Chokwe, and we also have heard from Wilma Taylor, who tells us that all the questions of aid and all the talk of aid is just a trick. And do you know what that means? The Red Cross is hyping people. And truth be told, if time would have permitted, we could have brought other testimony about Red Cross. It is a racist institution. We got testimony on the Red Cross when we wasn't even looking for testimony on the Red Cross. And this is a hype job. I mean, look, we have people who have been fooled, double fooled, triple fooled. We got these athletes who were fooled when they thought that becoming an athlete somehow would free them, right? And then they think that they're going to be pros, and that's a fool thing to think for most of them. And then when they become pros and they make this money, and then they try to give their money, and they're moved in their hearts, many of them, to give their money to their people in Katrina, who do they give their money to? They give their money to Red Cross, so here they are, fooled again. It's a hype job. And the government bears responsibility because the government has helped to discredit historically grassroots programs which, if still in existence, would have been able to take that money and use itself. It was the government that destroyed the Black Panther Party. It was the government that had to lead to the decline of the provisional government of the Republic of New Africa. It is the government that all these indigenous groups and all these communities which have went to help people have helped to destroy them through the counterintelligence programs and otherwise. It is the government, the United States government. By the way, not my government, right?